Slavery has been a pervasive and multifaceted institution throughout human history, manifesting in various forms across different cultures and continents. It is not confined to any single race or region, but has been a global phenomenon with profound and enduring impacts. Slavery has been institutionalized since the emergence of the first civilizations, such as Sumer in Mesopotamia around 3500 BC. It was prevalent in ancient societies, including Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. For instance, the Code of Hammurabi included laws regulating the treatment of slaves, indicating its deep-rooted and systematic nature in these societies. In Europe, slavery was common during the Roman Empire and continued in various forms throughout the Middle Ages. The Vikings, for example, engaged in slave raids across Europe, including Ireland, where they took slaves back to Scotland and Iceland. Africa and the Arab world also have a long history of slavery. The Arab slave trade, which included the trans-Saharan and Indian Ocean slave trades, spanned over 1,000 years and enslaved millions of Africans. This trade was largely based on racial and religious grounds, with non-Muslims being primary targets. In the Americas, slavery was established with European colonization. The transatlantic slave trade, which involved the forced transportation of millions of Africans to the Americas, is one of the most well-documented examples of slavery. Between the 16th and 19th centuries, approximately 12 to 15 million Africans were brought to the New World, with around 10 million surviving the journey. Of these, only about 450,000 were taken to the British, French, and Spanish colonies in what is now the United States and the Caribbean, while Brazil received nearly 5 million. Chattel slavery involves the ownership of human beings and their offspring as property who can be bought, sold, and forced to work without wages. This form of slavery was prevalent in many societies. Romans used slaves for agricultural labor, domestic work, and entertainment, such as gladiatorial games. Slaves were often captured during wars or purchased from slave markets. The Ottoman slave trade was one of the largest and most brutal. Slaves were used for various purposes, including labor, military service, and sexual slavery. The Janissary Corps, for example, was composed of enslaved soldiers who were converted to Islam and trained for military service. Slavery in colonial America and the United States of America spanned 246 years, a mere scintilla of human history. Slavery existed for countless millennia. Where humans existed, slavery nearly always existed as well. The absurd notion that Europeans were the progenitors and propagators of slavery defies history. What's more, the idea that white Americans are advocates of slavery smacks of intentional dishonesty and anti-white racism. The transatlantic slave trade, which lasted from the 16th to the 19th century, enslaved an estimated 12 to 15 million Africans. The Arab slave trade, on the other hand, lasted much longer, from the 7th to the 20th century, and enslaved tens of millions more. The Arab slave trade also had a more profound impact on the demographics of Africa and the Middle East. Europeans enslaved not only Africans but also other Europeans, particularly Slavs, who were targeted by various empires, including the Roman and Ottoman empires. The term slave is even derived from Slav, reflecting the prevalence of Slavic enslavement. The Irish experience with slavery is also significant. The Vikings began raiding Ireland in the 9th century, taking slaves back to Scotland and Iceland. These raids continued intermittently until the 11th century, when the Normans invaded and ended the practice of slavery in Ireland. During the 17th and 18th centuries, tens of thousands of Irish were sold as slaves to the Americas, particularly to the Caribbean and North America. They were often treated similarly to African slaves, working on plantations and in domestic service. The Irish were also used as indentured servants, but many were effectively slaves, forced into labor without the option of leaving. The legacy of slavery continues to affect modern societies. Slavery has left deep economic and social scars, including racial tensions and cultural divisions. The fight for reparations is ongoing in many countries, including the United States, where descendants of enslaved Africans are seeking compensation for historical wrongs. With few exceptions, the descendants of Irish slaves are not seeking reparations. Despite abolition, slavery continues in various forms today, including human trafficking, forced labor, and sexual exploitation. Estimates suggest that there are around 40 to 50 million people living in modern slavery worldwide. Slavery is a complex and multifaceted institution that has taken many forms throughout history. It is not unique to any single culture or region, but has been a global phenomenon with profound and lasting impact. Understanding the history of slavery helps us recognize its modern forms and work towards a more just and equitable world.